encourage your soul, enlighten your mind, and empower your faith. This is the Light Network. Welcome to the podcast where every day is a good day with Jesus. This is Today with Jesus. I'm Robert Hadfield.
I'm Dan Winker. Where did you ever get an idea like that?
I don't know. Yeah, you spend 8 seasons sitting, in a chair on a show for a while, and eventually it starts sinking in.
Well, it's about time. I've heard you can't carve driftwood, and now we're beginning to prove that to be true.
Wow. I don't know what possessed me to say something different. You do something one way for all these episodes, and today, I don't know, I said it differently. But anyway, this is Today with Jesus. You all know that. You hit play. You know where we are.
And you got your name right.
I did.
You did get that part. You got that part right.
It's the little things.
Yes. Your video was kind of, it froze up.
Oh, it did. I'm sorry.
Yes, and I had to look at your face in one position for at least 3 or 4 seconds. It was delightful, I might have to say.
No one should ever endure that.
That's really what I was thinking.
Right.
Oh, my. We are in episode, what is it? I'm at season what?
Number 8. Yeah.
Season 8, episode
7.
Number whatever, 7.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I have so enjoyed this study, Robert.
Yeah, me too.
This idea of discipleship. I have seen books I have them on my shelves. I see them on other shelves, and it'll just say discipleship or making a disciple or whatever. It's such a generic term. If you ask someone, what is a disciple? I'll guarantee you'll get one or two answers, and that is either student or follower or maybe learner. And all of those are true in reference to the meaning of the word translated disciple. But what did Jesus mean when he used that word? And that's kind of what we're doing this season. We're looking at how Jesus used the title disciple. He uses it so infrequently, and that makes where you find it such an emphatic observation. Okay, this is what he means when he says, go make disciples. Oh, and here's something else, and here's something else. And so it's delightful to come across those passages. There are 3 of them in Matthew, as we've seen. There are 3 in Luke, and then there are 3 in John. And there's some parallel passages in the Gospels that kind of dovetail or network with those specific 9 that we referenced. We're in the 3 that are found in the book of Matthew, and they're all in the same chapter, Matthew 10. Why don't you read the one for us today? That would be Matthew 10, verse 42. We're going to camp out there on that particular verse and see what it's actually saying. But let's read it and then remind ourselves in just a minute of the other 2 that we've already discussed in our season. Matthew 10:42, Robert.
Yeah. And whoever gives one of these little ones even a cup of cold water because he is a disciple, truly I say to you, he will by no means lose his reward.
All right. I love that phrase, because he is a disciple. So here is Jesus using our operative word, disciple. Now let's just pause for a moment and review. We have seen the word disciple 2 more times, excuse me, previously in Matthew chapter 10. We go back to Matthew chapter 10, verse 24. If you'll throw that up on the screen for us, it says, a disciple is not above his teacher, nor a servant above his master. And so a disciple is not above his teacher. A disciple is not one who tells his teacher what to think and do, but a disciple is one who lets the teacher tell him or her what to think or do. So a disciple, as Jesus used the word, is someone who listens to Jesus, someone who listens to Jesus. That's how our Lord used the word disciple. What did he mean by this word? Somebody that's going to listen to what I have to say is what I think of when I think of disciple. That's Jesus in his concept of the word. Now, verse 25, it is enough. And I love those three words. It is enough for the disciple to be like his teacher and the servant like his master. And here we learn that a servant, or excuse me, a disciple is someone who looks like Jesus. A disciple tries to be like his teacher. It's enough for the disciple. It's all he wants. I just want to be like my teacher. And so a disciple is someone who listens to Jesus. And in our Lord's mind, a disciple is one who tries to look like Jesus. Listen to Jesus, look like Jesus. That's what Jesus means by the word disciple. So let's now come to Matthew 10, verse 42. If you'll read it one more time for us,
Mm.
Robert, let's break it down and see what it's actually saying for us.
Yeah. Whoever gives one of these little ones even a cup of cold water because he's a disciple, truly I say to you, he will by no means lose his reward.
Okay, that's great. I'd like to break that down for us and then throw it to you, Robert, and let you make it live for us in a practical way, if you don't mind. But please chime in all the way through. I like to break down this particular passage with either 4 or 5 words, all starting with the letter W. Actually, the first 4 are questions.
Mm.
Uh, the first question is whoever, or the first word is whoever. And I say that that's the first word that we need to concentrate on, which basically is the begin at the beginning of the verse, and whoever. We need to emphasize that because as you put this verse into its context, Jesus is using that word all over the place. Let me go back to verse 37. Excuse my voice, and read. And as we read, if on the screen you can highlight, if those that are listening at a table with your pen and Bible in hand, if you want to mark it somehow, those that are driving, I'd recommend you not try to do that while you're driving, but make a mental note. Let's read and watch how often the word whoever comes up. Verse 37, whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever does not take his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. And whoever finds his life will lose it. And whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Whoever receives you receives me, and whoever receives me receives him who sent me. Then one who receives a prophet because he is a prophet will receive a prophet's reward, and the one who receives a righteous person because he's a righteous person will receive a righteous person's reward. And then our passage, whoever gives one of these little ones even a cup of water because he's a disciple, truly I say to you, he will by no means lose his reward. Whoever, all through this context. That tells me that when I read verse 42, whoever gives one of these little ones even a cup of water, that is universal. There are no exceptions in the mind of Jesus. In Jesus' mind, a disciple is someone who listens to him. In Jesus' mind, a disciple is someone who tries to look like him in interaction and working with others. But in Jesus' mind, a disciple is someone who lives like him. You cannot, in Jesus' mind, be one of his disciples unless you are trying to live like him in a specific way per this teaching. I can memorize all of the New Testament and I can quote one verse after another as is appropriate to whatever occasion. I can be a preacher of decades. I can be a Bible school teacher that people long to sit under. I can be someone that has made something of himself or herself financially. I can be high up on the social ladder. But if I am not someone who does specifically what Jesus says in this passage, then I'm falling short of what he means by the word disciple. Whoever does this is what I mean by the word disciple. And so I need to take pause, Robert, and ask myself, when I read this verse, am I doing what Jesus in this one verse suggests that a disciple does? You have any thoughts on that?
It's sort of all encompassing here, isn't it? I mean, this is for everybody. whoever. It's almost like he's trying to make a point.
So, how long have you been preaching the gospel?
Wow. Well, it depends on when you count when I started. I preached what I consider my first real sermon. It was a Sunday morning, like during the sermon slot, 21 years
There
ago.
you go.
Yeah.
21. That is
21
fabulous.
years ago. I'm not even that old.
Well, you act that way sometime.
Thanks.
Oh, so if you do that, if you go back to the first sermon you ever preached, then I have been preaching almost 60 years, 58 years. Wow.
Whoa.
Yes, I am that old. I feel older many times.
I didn't say it, but all the audience was thinking it. I'm just saying.
Yes, I'm sure. So
Right.
here's my point. You've been preaching for 21 years. I've been preaching for 58 years. But if I want to be a disciple in Jesus' eyes, I must do what Jesus is telling me to do in this verse. Or despite all of the sermons that I have prepared and all of the latest Bible classes that I've taught and all of the Bible school classes that I have prepared and all of the podcasts that you and I have been blessed to share in, regardless of all of that, I am not a disciple. In Jesus' eyes, if I'm not willing to do what he says to do in this passage, there are no exceptions. Whoever, I need to remember that word. Now let's keep reading. And there's another word that starts with W, and that would be the word what. Well, what is a disciple to be about doing? Jesus says, whoever gives one of these little ones even a cup of water. Whoever gives these little ones even a cup of cold water. Little ones. How would you interpret the word little ones, Robert?
It sort of makes me think of children.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Initially, that's where my mind wants to go.
But I think we can then go to talk about maybe people who are of less significance, maybe within a societal group, at least the perception. And frankly, even in that time, children were sort of viewed that way. Jesus comes in, remember the time when the disciples were trying to shoo away the children who want to come up to Jesus. Jesus says, no, you gotta allow the little children to come to me, because of such are the kingdom of heaven. But see, they viewed, I think maybe in our society as a whole, we probably see a more value within young people and children maybe feel more of an affection toward them than what it seems to me that the first century society in general thought about them. I mean, they're givers. I mean, they're takers, not givers. They don't really contribute anything to society. And so sometimes from a societal perspective, that this idea of little ones could be encapsulating of
Mhm.
people in general who are viewed as they don't have anything to contribute, therefore they aren't anything to me.
Right,
Yeah.
right. What comes to my mind are the words of Jesus in Matthew 25.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Come to me because I was hungry, I was thirsty, I was naked," and he go down the list. And then those that are to the right, the righteous will say, "Lord, when did we see you? When?" And he
Mm-hmm.
made this statement in Matthew 25. He said, "When, in as much as you did it to one of the least of these, you
Mm-hmm.
did it unto me." And so I put those two together. I put Matthew 10, verse 42 together to what I find in Matthew 25. And I come up with the idea of those that are marginalized, those of society, and that can be children. Children are to be seen, not heard. How many times have
Mm-hmm.
we heard that?
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're running around. Why don't their parents control those kids? And why don't they corral them in? And children can be in the way, and
Mm-hmm.
mamas and daddies can get to feeling that way sometimes too because they are so demanding. But then you have folks that are uh, standing on the roadside, will work for food. Those that are homeless and such like, people that are totally marginalized by society and within society are among the least of these. Let's pause for a moment, Robert, and let's just brainstorm. Uh, Give me some examples of individuals that we might have a tendency to uh, we nod to their existence, but we just, like the priest and the Levite, we just pass by on the other side and kind of ignore their needs, the marginalized of society,
Mm-hmm.
um, or the disenfranchised, even. Give me some examples.
Yeah. In big cities, you see them all the time at intersections,
Hmm.
stop signs, things like that, and they'll have the cardboard sign that's there. In small towns, I live in a small town now and have before, and people will say, "Oh, that's just so and so." He's always wandering up and down the streets, asking for spare change or $1 or something like that.
Hmm.
People like that are really easy to sort of unsee. You see them, but you
Right.
don't. Or they're
Right.
really easy to just pass by. You know.
Hmm.
Uh, well, yeah. I mean, I guess that's where I want to stop for now.
Okay.
Be
Well,
quiet there.
okay. I'll broaden the scope for us a little bit.
Yeah.
Here is someone that is disabled,
Okay. Yeah.
and they live in a wheelchair, and we walk by. Have you ever thought from their perspective?
Mm-hmm.
They're living in a wheelchair, and when someone comes up, everyone is looking down on them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you're looking down on, automatically that's condescending. And so uh, I know I have a preacher friend that lives in a wheelchair, and I love to be in his company. He blesses my life. And whenever we're together, he has a special wheelchair now that can raise him up and we can look eye to eye. But before then, I loved to find places where he was and we could I'd sit down. And so he would be sitting in his wheelchair and I'd be sitting in a chair and we could converse eye to eye and none of this looking down on.
Mm-hmm.
You ever thought about how a person in a wheelchair lives
Mm.
with everyone looking down on? And then some will come by and pay uh, knowledge to your existence. They'll say hi, but they don't feel comfortable spending time with you because you're in a wheelchair and they have other people they're wanting. That can be someone. I'm not saying that everyone in a wheelchair is marginalized, but I'm
Right.
saying they could fit into this category of someone that is overlooked by
Hmm.
society. Okay, your turn.
Yeah, that
You think of
that
anybody else?
well, that spurs me to think about people who are suffering with maybe some sort of chronic illness, and you
Hmm.
just don't know what to say, and so because of that, you do what you just said. You say, "Hi, how you?" You keep going, because
Right,
you don't want to get into a deep conversation with them because you don't know what you'll say if they bring up the cancer diagnosis, or
right,
maybe it's a parent who has a teenage child who struggles
right.
mentally, and
Hmm.
you don't know what you'd say. You might say the wrong thing, so you just go on and
Right. Well,
marginalize them.
as a cancer survivor, I understand. I walked that line,
Mm,
and you can just say I can just say this from personal experience. My
mm-hmm.
disease is not my identity.
Yeah,
You, it's like Naaman the leper. Naaman the leper. You can't even say Naaman without saying, "Oh, the guy that had leprosy,"
right.
but
Yeah,
not Naaman the used to be leper,
yeah, yeah.
but always he's identified by his disease. And so if we just remember, okay, here's a person that has a has been cured of a disease or they're struggling with a chronic illness,
Mm-hmm.
that illness does not identify them as a human being. And we
Mm-hmm.
don't need to marginalize them in our thoughts and just give them a passing nod of existence and press on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my turn. Let's see here. How about those that have lost their jobs?
Mm,
We have a friend right now, and I've asked him Sunday night, how long have you been working for blank? And he said 10 years. And I asked that question not knowing, I did not know, but that he had just lost his job.
mm,
I did not know that. And I was coming home, and Diane told me, "Did you know so and so had lost his job this week?" I said, "No, I didn't know that." Well, I saw him last night at prayer meeting, and I went up to him. I said, "Man, I owe you an apology. I asked you that awkward question, not knowing that you just lost your job." And well, see, now I have to remember this. He's the same person he was before he lost his job.
mm-hmm.
And he is just as valuable to society, and he is just as valuable to the Lord as he was before he lost his job. And I asked him, I said, "Man, can I put you on my prayer list and talk to the Lord about getting you another job?" And so he said, "Yes, please."
Mm-hmm.
And so uh, I wanted him to know he wasn't marginalized, and he wasn't somebody that going to look on as less than he used to be. We're geared that way for some reason. And this is what we mean when we say the marginalized of society, not
Mm-hmm.
just little children. Yes, little children that need to be seen and not heard. Uh, they don't need to be treated that way. And when a child comes up and is looking for some attention from you, get on your knees if you can.
Mm-hmm.
Get on your knees and get on their eye to eye level, and shake hands with them and show them some attention. And then, if you're like me, get around to find another adult and let them help you get back up. But you're on their level. So show them how special they really are to Jesus and how special they are to you.
Mm-hmm.
Children, the disabled, those that are disappointed in life by loss of jobs, or, hey, here's one. How about those that have lost their marriage?
Yeah.
They've had to go through a divorce. Man, so many people put a big D on the forehead of those that have been divorced. Whether they are innocent or guilty in the
Mm-hmm.
process is immaterial.
Mm-hmm.
They've experienced a traumatic loss in life. And we may not know what to say. Uh, how about this? "I'm so sorry. I want you to know I love you as much today as I did yesterday. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm here for you. I don't mean that. I mean that. I
Mm-hmm.
really mean that.
Yeah.
And I want to confirm my love to you." And So the divorce they can be marginalized in a big time hurry. Here's
Yeah.
another one on that same note. Those that have committed sin, and sometimes the sin is tremendously egregious, and they have asked for God's forgiveness. It's really hard sometimes for some of us to be as forgiving as God, especially if the sin negatively impacted me. It's hard for me to be as forgiving of God, but I don't have that right. I
Mm.
must be as forgiving as God. When somebody asks God to forgive them, God forgives. When they ask me to forgive them, no matter what they've done and no matter how it has impacted my life forever, I am obliged to forgive and not marginalize them and treat them as less than they really are in the eyes of God. So, uh, rather, here's someone that made a huge mistake and violated their marriage vows, and they're very guilty of uh, committing adultery.
Mhm.
They want God's forgiveness. Can they get God's forgiveness? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, if they're penitent, they get God's forgiveness, and now they ask me to forgive. Or am I to forgive them? Yes
Hmm.
or no?
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, do I have the right to say I'm not sure if they're penitent or not? No
uh,
joke. I don't have
uh,
that right.
no, no.
And
Mm.
I can't marginalize them by saying, well, I'm going to put my forgiveness on hold to see
Yeah.
just how penitent you really are.
Right.
Read Luke 17, verses 1 to 3. And that kind of fits in line here. And you got the guy that was guilty of this kind of stuff in 1 Corinthians 5. And in 2 Corinthians 2, it says, confirm your love to him
Hmm.
because he did come back to the Lord
Hmm.
and make changes in his life. So this is another example of someone that's marginalized. You have children, you have the disabled, you have those that are disappointed by loss of life or loss of relationship. You have those that are guilty of sin, no
And
matter
sin.
what. Some that are just so egregious. We can't marginalize. We're to reach out to. So whoever we are, there's the whoever.
Hmm.
Then you have the what? Give a cup of cold water. Give a gesture of refreshment, if you please, to the marginalized of society. So here is a third W, and that is the why. Why are we to do this? Whoever gives one of these little ones even a cup of cold water, because he is a disciple.
Mm.
Why do you do this to the marginalized? Why do you reach out to the marginalized? Simply put, you do it because you're a disciple of Jesus. In the Lord's eyes, a disciple is somebody that does what he did. Who are some of the marginalized of our Lord's society to whom he reached? Can you think of
Mm.
any, Robert?
Uh, Pretty much anybody he interacted with. I mean, with some exceptions,
Yeah.
but I've been thinking while you were giving some examples about the blind man and Jesus, whom Jesus healed,
Yeah.
and later they said, hey, who sinned? The blind man or his parents?
Oh, there
And
you
Jesus
go.
said, no, you got the whole thing wrong. But I mean that they made these assumptions that added to the physical malady that he experienced and just compounded the difficulty that he had, but it also
Right.
compounded the degree to which he was marginalized. Women,
Mhm.
from Jesus's perspective, interacting with the Jews, Samaritans would have been,
Oh, yeah.
on the outside, certainly Gentiles as well.
Uh-huh.
So I mean, yeah, I guess
I
there's just a few
remember
examples.
I remember what Luke 15, where Jesus tells the story of the lost sheep, the lost piece of silver, the lost son, and
Hmm.
all those three succeeded or came from his interacting with the scribes and the Pharisees who grumbled
Hmm.
because he was eating with the marginalized.
Yeah,
He was eating with the tax
tax
collectors
collectors.
and the sinners. And when you take that terminology, tax collectors and sinners, and you bring it into Matthew, you find that the sinners weren't sinners because they weren't reading their Bible. They were sinners because of egregious iniquity.
Mm,
Matthew uses the words tax collectors and prostitutes.
mhm,
And Jesus was sitting down with people like this and giving attention to people like this with the gospel. They came to Jesus, Luke 15 says, to hear him. They needed the gospel. They wanted to hear the gospel. Jesus sat down, fellowship with them, and was teaching them the gospels. And the scribes and Pharisees were complaining about it. Imagine that.
mm.
So here is our Lord reaching out to the marginalized of society. And he tells us, I don't care who you are. I don't care who you are. If you want to be my disciple, you will do the same. You will live the way I live my life. And then the last word that starts with a W for time's sake is the word wow.
Mhm.
And that's because Jesus says, a person that does this, Jesus said, truly, I say to you, I'm the one telling you this, and I'm telling you this, you can go to the bank with it.
Mm.
Truly, I say to you, he will by no means, truly, I say, by no means, he by no means will lose his reward. There is something special waiting a disciple who reaches out like Jesus to the marginalized of society.
Wow.
Throw in some questions here and make it practical for us, Robert.
Well, I've been asking myself as I've tried to apply this passage: Am I willing to live like Jesus? If I'm not, I
Mm.
can't be a disciple. So, am I willing to really be like him? Do I struggle to love others? I've got 4 questions. Number 1: Do I struggle to love others? So, look at Jesus's heart of compassion and note how he saw value in every person. And boy, I've been thinking as we've been talking today, sometimes I'm just so cynical of others. Well,
Oh,
that
yeah. Yes.
that guy who walks around town asking for spare change, well, he's been doing that for 15 years. Can't he just go out and get a job of his own?
Mhm.
Well, that lady who's struggling with anxiety and depression, she just needs to pray more. And if she had the faith that she needs to have, all that would go away. See, we do this.
Ouch.
We assign things, just like those fellas did when they came to Jesus and said, "Hey, that blind man, who sinned to make him blind?" Jesus says, "You don't even understand what's going on here. Why would you
Right.
make that assumption?" So, do I
Uh-huh.
struggle to love other people? And a lot of times on this podcast, we spend a lot of time focusing on the heart of Jesus and his compassion toward other people, much as we've done today. Question number 2: Am I too busy? Am I just too busy? I think about uh, my to do list. And boy, I've got a lot of things on my to do list. And sometimes I'm just so busy that I tell myself I don't have time to stop and to, maybe I should say, be bothered with the concerns, the needs of another
Mm.
person. Perhaps
Mhm.
the priest and the Levite, I know it's just a story that Jesus told in the story we call the parable of the Good Samaritan, but, you know, maybe the justification for people who can relate to what the priest and Levite did is something along
Mhm.
those lines. So maybe I need to reevaluate my to-do list to see if I'm too busy to fulfill the greatest commands. Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second is like it. So he places this second, an additional command, not intending to demean it, to place it lower in priority, but say that one naturally flows from the first one. So the love for God and the love of God in my heart will then engender this love for my fellow man. And,
Mhm.
if I'm too busy to fulfill that, Jesus says, which summarizes really everything that he would ever teach, then I'm too busy. Number 3, do I really count others as more significant than myself? Uh,
Ooh.
Paul tells us, do nothing out of selfish ambition or conceit. Oh, in a selfie, social media likes, how many followers do you have kind of world? Um,
Mm,
there's nothing wrong with taking selfies, right? There's nothing wrong with being on social media. We're on a podcast, and from time to time we check in to see how many people are listening. Uh, we're interested in that, and we want to connect with people as listeners. But it can get to a spot where it becomes conceited and out of selfish
right,
ambition, and that's something that all of us living in a society like ours have to keep in mind.
right.
Paul says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, esteem others, count others as more significant than yourselves. Do I really do that? How can I fulfill that, putting others' needs above my own? So you see the mom who is by herself in the checkout line at Walmart, and all of the self checkouts are closed or malfunctioning, and they only have one checkout lane with a real person there, to scan your items and assist you in payment. So do I go first because I'm busy and I got things to do? Or could I help this mom who's wrangling 3 kids all under 5 years old by
Hmm.
saying, hey, you go in front of me. Here, can I assist you in getting the things out of your cart and placing them on the belt to go down toward the scanner? Are
Yeah.
there ways? And that leads me to the fourth question. Am I overcomplicating this? When it comes down to it, what Jesus is telling us in this verse is just to serve other people. And if I'm
Yeah.
going to look like Jesus, then I'm going to be a servant. Even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many, Jesus says in Mark 10, verse 45 or so. So he who had everything, 2 Corinthians 8:9, who was rich, came and took on poverty so
Became
that
poor.
we through his poverty might become rich. Am I
Hmm.
am I overcomplicating just living like Jesus? Serving others isn't rocket science. It's just a matter of focusing on others, really listening to them, being aware of the people around us instead of just only being aware of what's going on the
Yeah.
little 6-inch piece of glass that I have in my hand all the time.
Right.
Just pay attention and then respond the way that you think Jesus would want you to respond. Err on the side of compassion at all times.
Hmm.
Lean toward that, and I think that would help.
Step away from self.
Mm-hmm.
Step into the life of another.
Mm,
That's what we must do.
yeah. So those 4 questions are questions I'm asking myself. Am I really living like Jesus? And this isn't just something for to the point you've made throughout the episode for just some people to do. It's not just a preacher thing to do or an elder thing. It's not just the person who's aware of his or her reputation, the person running for local office or whatever. Whoever, anybody who wants to be his disciple has to live like this. So I need to learn to live like Jesus, and Jesus says that looks like serving other people.
So here's something we might be. My microphone sounds a little different. Does it sound different to you?
It's okay to me.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Here is something that we might want to try just this Lord's Day. Make this
Mm,
so simple
okay.
and and make it a part of life. When we go to worship on Sunday morning, if there's somebody sitting by themselves, give them attention.
Mm-hmm.
Go sit down next to them and visit with them. And if you are free to do so, ask if you might sit with them during the worship service. Let them know that at that moment in time, they are the most special person in your life. And lift them up by giving them some attention. And they're sitting there by themselves. They may be a stranger. They may just be someone that people don't interact with as much. It may be a widow that has just lost a spouse, widower that just lost a spouse. Maybe someone that uh, has just come back to the Lord after years. Maybe someone that's come back to the Lord after a horrible decision that should not have been made. Give them some attention. Let them know they are loved and sit down next to them and visit, and then perhaps stay there and visit and worship with them side by side. Marge, reach out to the marginalized of society and let people see the heart of Jesus. I'm going to throw it back to you, Robert, as we close.
I'm just thinking too, before we give the commercial thing at the end, as long as you lead with compassion,
Mm,
you don't have to have you don't have to know every little thing that you ought to say or whatever. And in some cases, there's not anything that you really can say, as long as you
right.
say I care. I want to pray, and remember that somebody's circumstances, you said this earlier, don't define them, and so that means you can talk
Right.
about other things with them than just whatever that thing is that may be on both of your minds. And in fact, by treating them
Yeah.
normally in conversation, you will help them to relax and really communicate your care for them. But I've
Hmm.
found that sometimes, when I'm with someone and I just don't know what to say, sometimes I'll just say that to them. Hey, listen, I really wish I knew something I could say that could alleviate your burden. And then I'll say, but at the same time, I know that there's really nothing I can say other than I'm here for you, and if I can do something for you, I really, really want to do that. I hope you'll tell me. And
Yeah.
uh, lead with compassion. That makes a huge difference, and that
Right.
lets people know you care. It gets you in the door with the marginalized. I think a lot of us want to do right. We just don't know how to do it. Don't
Yeah.
overcomplicate it. Just
Well,
do
as
it.
someone who's experienced great trauma in life and as somebody who's worked through cancer and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
I can say this from experience as someone receiving attention. There's one thing you can say that fits every circumstance,
Mm.
and it's the only thing that will be remembered.
Mm-hmm.
And that is when somebody comes up to you and says, I want you to know I really love you.
Mm.
And when somebody tells you in the difficulties of life, I love you, that's what you remember.
Yeah.
And from that experience, I have learned when you go to somebody that now is in times of difficulty, you don't need to come up with some cliche, magical bibbity bobbity boo words to try and make
Yeah.
it different. All you have to do is say, I just want you to know I came by to do one thing, two things. I came by first to say, I love you. And second, I would like for you to help me. Let's go talk to our Father together.
Mm.
Let's pray.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll never forget that. And it can help them reach out to the marginalized. That's how we look, or rather live like Jesus
Yeah.
as a disciple.
As a disciple. I hope you'll continue to join us for our series on what Jesus meant by the title Disciple. It's all this season, season 8 on Today with Jesus, and you can find our episode archives on our website, thelightnetwork.tv. Click the button that says Today with Jesus, and you'll see all of our season 8 archives, plus the other stuff that we've done in previous seasons, all available right there. It's all free. We want you to avail yourself to that if that can be a blessing to you. We pray that it is. Don't forget that you can catch new episodes by hitting the follow or subscribe button either in your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. You can access any of those channels by searching for Today with Jesus or The Light Network, and that'll certainly get you there. Brand new episodes
So
released every Tuesday. Mm-hmm.
is that the commercial stuff
That's the
that you
commercial
were talking
stuff.
about?
Yeah, this is it. This is it.
You did such a great job, really. Thank
just,
you.
just reminding people, that's all, because we want you
That's
all to
right.
be with us every week. And see, when you
Right.
subscribe, it automatically pushes the new stuff to you. So you don't have to remember to go and
Yes.
get it. It comes straight to your phone. So, see, we want you to be here. Email us, by
And
the
share
way.
it with
Yeah.
yes.
Share it with others. Send us an email, mail, M-A-I-L, at thelightnetwork.tv. And by all means, share it with somebody else.
Right.
We want the message of Jesus to be spread as broadly as possible and
Amen.
to bless as many lives as possible. So that's
Amen.
what we're here for. And I've enjoyed today. Thank you so much.
I have to. Thank you, Robert. God bless everybody.
Let's go out and live today and every day with Jesus. See you then.
Amen.